Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. How many days are we told?
15 days.
Oh my God.
Days.
Super close. We've got new early voting data out of Nevada. That is quite interesting to dig into with our friend Logan, so we will do that. We also have some new numbers about how both campaigns are making their closing pitch. They clearly both have very different analyses of how to move voters here in the final days, so we'll dig into that as well. We also have a lot of activity on the campaign trail. Donald Trump working at McDonald's. We'll show you that. He also was talking about Arnold Palmer's dick for some reason. Yeah. We'll show you that as well for whatever that's worth. Elon is out potentially breaking election law. We'll break that down for you. Kamala was on MSNBC with Reverend Al Sharpton, clearly trying to make a pitch to black men in particular. Some interesting moments there. She continues to struggle with Arab American voters and gave a just, in my opinion, horrendous answer about whether she could lose the election over October 7th and her siding with Joe Biden and not breaking with him whatsoever. We also have some updates for you out of the Middle East. Israel, assassinated successfully Yahya Sinwar. They released the video of, it's a drone video of the moments leading up to his death and really in certain ways provided a final propaganda win for him, even outlets like Wall Street Journal writing it up as such. So we'll break those details down for you. And Ken Klippenstein is going to join us. He just posted some documents that were leaked to a Telegram channel that was the U.S.'s assessment of how Israel may retaliate against Iran. A lot that's interesting there, both the substance of the documents, also details about, our relationship with Israel and the media's relationship to reporting on these type of leaked documents. So Ken will join us to break all of that down. Yeah, it's going to be a great show today. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe, breakingpoints.com. You're going to get access to part of our conversation with Logan. That's what you guys get, as well as the show early, AMA, etc. I think we're going to be doing that tomorrow. So go ahead and subscribe, breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber. But let's get to Logan. Joining us now is Logan Phillips. Great to see you, sir. Our exclusive partner here at Breaking Points. Always glad to have you.
Hey, always great to be on.
Awesome. All right, let's talk a little bit about the early vote. So some interesting analysis that we flagged on ABC News. Want to get your reaction to. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
Based on the likely partisanship of the voters that we've seen so far, we're seeing more Republicans as a share of the electorate than Democrats. Take a look at that. 4 years ago, less than a third, only 32% of people that had voted so far were Republicans. That's up 6 points so far this cycle. Now, that could be a sign of enthusiasm among Republicans. It could be because Donald Trump is sometimes at least supporting early voting. And it may be that these are voters they're going to vote anyway on Election Day. But the bottom line is that people are voting and they're enthusiastic about this race. In Pennsylvania, we've seen Republicans so far ahead of the 2020 pace. Again, Democrats are still a larger share of early voters, but there are more Republicans in just about all of the states where we've seen significant votes so far.
So that is aggregated data. We also have this we can put up there on the screen. L2 is doing a job. They're aggregating all of this early ballots that are actually been returned. So Logan, what can we glean from this? I know it's a little bit like alchemy. You're not supposed to dig too much, but this is all we got. These are actual voters. That we've got votes like in the bank. So what do you see so far that's different and perhaps interesting to you?
I would say the biggest thing is that the American electorate is engaged. 2020 saw the biggest turnout in American history. In 2024, well, I don't think we're going to reach those levels, is going to be a lot higher. And it makes sense. When someone votes once, they're a lot more likely to vote a second time.
Right. Good point.
So you don't think it will reach 2024 levels, but it will be, 2020 levels, but it will be higher than, say, 2016 and previous elections?
That's what I think. I can't say it should be number 2, but I think it's going to be high up there.
So I heard someone making the case for actually digging into the early voting data, because I know traditionally everyone says, listen, you can't really read too much into this. On the other hand, post-COVID, you do have such a large share of the electorate that are actually voting. And given the fact that you've had polling misses in a variety of different directions, isn't there actually a case for taking seriously, who is actually turning out and trying to glean from that, okay, we know the Democratic strategy is really to excite young women. We know the Republican strategy is try to turn out some of these infrequent voters, especially among young men. Can't we glean from this whether they're being successful in some of those strategies or not.
Yeah, as long as you do it with a fair amount of caution. Because, you know, normally with the stuff I use, for example, I can go back to the 1960s and say, hey, this is how accurate it is, right? Here we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants. And everyone, if you come in with any sort of bias, you're going to be looking for the things that support your side, or if you're cynical, the things that go against your side.
Right.
And they're going to stand out to you.
Yeah.
So to find like a fair, balanced account, like you have to have an absolute mastery level knowledge of county by county, precinct by precinct, what's going on, like this guy, John Ralston, reporter in Nevada, has.
Right.
Most people don't have that. And so you got to be really careful who you listen to here. There's large, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's a good segue. We actually have Ralston's piece about early voting. Let's go and put that up there, please, on the screen. So what really he flagged, Logan, was just the major difference in turnout amongst Republicans. Some of the data is quite striking, I believe. Krystal, do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, I have it.
Clark
So
County.
Dems won the mail-in ballot in Clark County, as they're expected to, by 2-1, about 30,000 to 18,000. But they only now have about an 1,800 vote lead over the Republicans. Last time they led at this same point, we're talking about after one day, so everybody keep in mind, this is after one day. But last time after one day, they had a 40,000 vote lead, and this time they have an 1,800 vote lead. So he's flagging that as potentially very significant. He goes on to say, if as expected, there's a 5-point or so Republican turnout edge after Election Day, that means Democrats will have to win independents by somewhere around 5 points to win the state, which is roughly what Biden won independents by. He won independents by 6 points in 2020, but that was 2020. That was Joe Biden. This is Kamala Harris. Your response to Mr. Ralston, who everybody does feel like has earned his credibility in the early vote analysis arena.
He's like the only guy I trust in this stuff. I would say it is a mildly good sign for Republicans. It is very hard for us to know what's going to happen on Election Day.
Right.
It's also expected, I don't mean specifically in the Nevada numbers, but absolutely we expected Republicans to vote a higher share because, one, Donald Trump was warning everyone not to do it. Democrats were encouraging everyone to do it. And Democrats disproportionately viewed COVID as a bigger threat, and therefore were using vote by mail and early voting at much higher rates than Republicans.
Right.
So it was never going to be repeated to the same degree. 2020 is going to be the biggest skew we'll probably ever have.
Yeah, the biggest distance between the two parties in terms of the modes of voting.
Exactly.
So to go back to that first soundbite that we played with, what was it, ABC, talking about how there's maybe a 10-point margin that Republicans have closed the gap between Democrats. That doesn't strike you as particularly significant given that 2020 was such an anomalous year with COVID.
Yeah, I would say it's slightly good news for Republicans, but how much, it's hard to say. I mean, if you think about it like this, right? If we were looking at the 2020 vote, we would think Democrats were heading towards a massive landslide, which is what the polls suggested too.
Yeah.
Because they had so many votes early. But then Trump arguably had even better turnout on Election Day than Dems did. Democrats just won the swing voters, and that's why they won the election.
Yeah,
and very narrowly. Yeah.
You know, I mean, if we look a little bit at the highly engaged populace, can we put, what is it, A2, please, up on the screen? Because I was looking at that. Krystal and I really struck out to us that if you look at that 65-plus number, old people like to vote early. They certainly do. You got a lot of ballots that have been returned. It's also pretty white. You got 67% there, people who are white. If you look at the gender gap, though, and I was like, maybe it could be a good sign for Democrats. You've got, 54% of early voters who are women. So that could certainly be good, considering this is going to be one of the larger gender gap elections, or at least that's what is currently projected. So can you give us the bull and the bear case for both parties within this, at least?
Yeah, I think the bull case for Republicans is they're turning out some of their votes early. That means they can focus on the other voters on Election Day.
Right.
Bull case for Dems is that they're doing a great job of turning out black voters in major cities. Atlanta Democrats have been very happy about what they've seen. Wisconsin,
really?
You know, I've heard good things from my friends who are on the Democratic side of Milwaukee.
Okay.
Yeah, similar in Michigan. I think Detroit has had one of the highest turnout rates, if not the highest turnout rate in the state of Michigan. So yeah, like you said, there's kind of something for everybody to take a look at and be like, yay, we're doing our thing.
Well, it's fun, right? It's fun to look at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's go and put a 4 up on the screen. You mentioned that the one thing we can clearly say is that voters are quite engaged and turnout will be relatively high. In North Carolina, day 1, early voting set another record, narrowly beating out, I think the 2020 was the previous record. They say there was no clear partisan edge. This is also obviously really significant because Western North Carolina was just walloped by Hurricane Helene. People still digging out, still recovering. So it's good to see so many folks being able to turn out to the polls here. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Logan, is one of the theories is that Republicans are relying on these less frequent voters to turn out. And so in prior election cycles, you might have said, okay, high turnout probably means that's good for Democrats. We can't necessarily say that anymore. In fact, it could very well be the reverse.
It could very well be the reverse. I think that's the thing about these elections. We have this crystal clear image of what the election is supposed to be, and then the election actually happens, and there's going to be some real differences. And we have these narratives that go on for months, and so it kind of makes us view it through a prism. In 2016, boy, did people undercount the voters who supported Trump, who were white and didn't have a college education, blue collar, who turned out in big numbers. And, you know, for Democrats, President Obama was incredibly successful at getting non-white voters and young voters out who didn't historically vote before. So we don't necessarily know what it's going to be, right? It really depends on who those people are, right, that end up turning out. And I haven't seen enough analysis on this, but I'm also curious with the early vote, how many of these are people that haven't voted before?
Yes, such a key point. Well, this is part of the problem with early vote and even state by state is they don't necessarily break it down all the time. You know, we're lucky when we even get partisan identification. So some of them is just demographic, or sometimes it's early ballots requested versus return. So in the swing states, do we have early voting now in all of the swing states that is open? So will we get more data in this week? How should we look, you know, for the week going forward?
I believe so. I'm not 100% certain. I know we definitely have it started in Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. So, yeah, I guess I just don't know about Arizona off the cuff.
Right. Pretty interesting. It's interesting, certainly.
Absolutely. All right, let's turn to how the parties are making their closing pitch. Premium subscribers, this can be posted for you guys exclusively. Now, everybody else will get it for free later in the week, but definitely subscribe if you want to hear what Logan has to say about the closing pitch that both of the parties are making. So we found this really fascinating. Put this up on the screen.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.